Okay, we are live.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Buncombe County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee meeting. We have a lot of things going on today. One is we have a new member, and what I'd like to do is wait until after our presentation to do introductions. And then we do have a presentation. So let's see. Why don't we get started with the presentation and then we can go through the rest of the agenda if everybody's okay with that.
That sounds great. Susan, do you mind if I ask, I see that there are a couple call-in numbers on here, just wanting to see if those individuals don't mind to introduce themselves so we know who is who.
Dan, I'm going to be one of the call-in numbers simply because of my bandwidth issues. What came up right now is my cell phone number. And I don't know how to change that to say Lori Roth. I have tried a million things so that when I call people, it says either Das or Lori Roth, and I can't figure that one out yet.
That is no problem. I just wanted to make sure, since this is an open meeting, we do want to make sure that the community at large know who all's on the call as well.
Nice to see your face, Taylor. Dan is on vacation, Jen, and the only person I don't see on the screen right now that I was expecting was Greg.
I'm here.
Oh, you're the AO75.
I don't know.
Okay, excellent. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
All right. Jen, do you want to introduce Lori?
I'd be happy to. I'm excited to have Lori Roth with us today. She's the North Carolina In-Home Aid and Consumer Direction Program Consultant. I actually had to look at the title because I knew it was a long one, but I had an opportunity of working with Lori a little bit whenever I was at the division. So we're excited to have her with us today to talk a little bit about consumer-directed services. So I'll turn it over to you, Lori.
Thank you, Jen. I was going to say I have a PowerPoint, and so you can change it to the first. You can change it from the title slide. Thank you. And so, I want to talk a little bit about consumer direction just as a whole, and then I'll talk a little bit about what it means to be a consumer-directed provider in a county. So whenever movements towards consumer direction are developing, it's inevitable that words like freedom, authority, support, responsibility, and continuity come to the forefront. But regardless of the words used, most people talk about consumer directions as a means of having more control, more opportunities, and responsibility for creating a meaningful life and using services and supports of their choosing to do so. So, some of the principles that I have on this first slide just sort of reflect that. It's often about somebody who wants to, wants to decide who's going to provide their care, when it's going to be provided, how it's going to be provided. Technically, the individual that is the consumer in consumer direction is the what we call the employer of record. They are the ones who make all of those types of decisions. So basically, like I said, the principles of consumer direction are pretty simple, and they're all about choice and personal individual responsibility for how services are received. All right, and so we're already on the second slide, bear in mind. Okay, so these are, again, a few important aspects of consumer direction, and, there is a financial, I think we're one slide ahead of where we should be. Okay, actually, okay. Now we can stay where we are. The presentation that Zach is sharing, I edited out a few things, so it doesn't matter. It still has all of the stuff on it that it's supposed to have on it. I just had, in order to, make it look not as crowded, I took a few of the bullet points off, and I'm just going to, use those. I'm going to speak to them. So when I looked up there, I'm like, well, that slide doesn't look the same as mine. Sorry. I realized what happened there. Okay, so some of the important concepts are that financial management service, manages the payroll for the participant or the consumer. And that's how they pay their personal assistants. And as I mentioned, the very first one, you see, it gives them more control over their own lives and that sort of stuff. So also consumer direction, the biggest thing I think for most folks is when you're talking about consumer direction, it's kind of wrapping your mind around the fact that the method of service is different than what we're used to. We're used to an aide being sent in with a care plan and being supervised by a nurse and all of those sorts of things. And there still is some of that in the consumer direction. It is just that the consumer is sort of who develops that care plan, who supervises their worker, so it's kind of wrapping your mind around that and letting go of the concepts that we have that surround the traditional agency-based in-home aid services that most of us are used to. Even when departments of social services directly provide services and don't necessarily use an agency, they still follow those same kind of traditional, procedures where a licensed individual, whether it's a social worker or a nurse, does the assessments, develops the plans, all of that sort of stuff. So in consumer direction, we have a care advisor who can be a social worker or a nurse, and they work in concert with that participant. And really, it's very person-centered. I'm sure you've heard of person-centered planning, person-centered care. Well, consumer direction is very person-centered. It's all about what that consumer wants and how they want it to be. And again, that's sort of a new thing. Usually we're telling them how we're going to provide the services and supports that they need. So it's just wrapping your mind around that. One of the really important things, as I mentioned, was that consumer-directed programs really have few liability issues of any consequence, because that's another sort of barrier to folks jumping on this bandwagon as they worry about fraud and abuse and all of that kind of stuff. But in all the years that it's been in use throughout the country and even in our own.
Lori, I believe you got, Lori, can others hear her?
No, I cannot hear her. Did we lose her?
I can't hear her either.
I think she's
Stop this.
muted.
She had called in. Zach, if you don't mind to stop this video. I put it in the chat.
Jen, can I say something?
Sure.
I was just wanting folks to know that we thought about having this presentation because we thought that perhaps some of the extra money that we have to spend or allocate might still be, might be available for some for a program like this one, the consumer directed services. So if people are scratching their head and wondering why we have her today, that was my reasoning behind having her speak so that we could understand a little bit more about what this service is. So when we get her back,
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I apologize. My phone rang and somehow it, instead of just going to my voicemail, it bounced me off. I don't know why it did that. Hopefully that won't happen again. I apologize. I think we were on page 4 of the slide deck. Okay. All right. So yeah, if we can go to the next slide, it's kind of who can benefit from a formal program of consumer direction. Yeah, consumer-directed services are really a possibility for anyone. You know, it can be, they can have age-related care needs, chronic conditions, any of those sorts of things. And so essentially anybody can benefit from being a part of consumer direction. Next slide. One too many. So consumer direction is a team approach. So the great thing about that is that you're not alone. There's plenty of support built into this model of service delivery, allowing for it to be very successful. And these are some of the titles of the parts of the team. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about the protections. Consumer-directed services value the security of all of the different participants, and the protections are incorporated throughout the design of consumer-directed support options. Next slide. So some of the protections for the participant or the care recipient, the individual who's getting the care. All of these listed here are protective measures, and they're not excessive. They're really just practical. As I mentioned, the care advisor is the individual from the local provider agency who helps the participant through the process, doing their self-assessment. They also do the assessment as far as the appropriateness of the participant for the program. And then not every participant does, but since we work with folks that are elderly, we may have some folks that have dementia or other memory issues. And so they may want to select a representative to make their decisions and to put forth what their desires are. And so that can be selected. It is not always. If an individual can make their own decisions, we encourage that because, again, it is consumer directed. And I think I touch on this later on, but because I feel this is really important, if somebody is designated as the representative, they cannot be the paid caregiver. So if a daughter calls up, she's asking about wants to get her mom on the program, and you ask her, you know, who makes all your mom's decisions, and she says, I do, but I also provide her all the care. Somebody else would have to be designated to make those decisions, or she would have to hire somebody else to be the paid caregiver. The feds and the state don't really like people hiring themselves, deciding on their own pay rate, deciding how many hours they're going to work, deciding on what that care plan is going to look like. So that's one of those protections for this program against potential fraud or abuse of the dollars. And I mentioned earlier about the financial management system is provided for each participant. They do background screening on potential personal assistance, and there's also a Bill of Rights for each participant. All right, so the next slide, and this is what identifies a representative. We sort of talked a little bit about it. And again, always remember that the designation of a representative is not mandatory. It's simply an option that's needed. And again, some of the things are pretty basic. You know, they have personal commitment to the participant. They have a good rapport and good communication with them. They have ongoing contact. Doesn't seem like they're an alcoholic or a drug abuser. And they have a reputation for treating the person kindly. And oftentimes it's a family member. So all of these things are usually, pretty easy to identify. Okay, next slide. So who is the personal assistant? And again, the personal assistant is hired by the participant to provide the need and the wanted care. Selection of the personal assistant is key to a successful consumer-directed service program. And this may well be a new experience for the participant because they may never have hired, quote unquote, somebody to provide services to them. And so there's just some real basic things that, they need to be a citizen or a legal alien. They need to be 18 years. They can be a relative, like even the spouse. And I sometimes with CAP, I'm not sure whether that's allowable or not. They have, as far as participants, they have things that are a little bit different than ours, but again, can communicate. They're willing to sign an employment agreement because there is a contract between the participant and the employee that outlines what is expected, the expectations, willing to submit to a criminal background check, and then also test negatively for TB and other illicit drugs. Next slide. And so the next slide describes some of the protections for the personal assistant. And again, pretty much practical participants. They're working for somebody who can manage them, either the participant or the representative of the participant. Again, I said they have the written agreement, that contract. State and federal laws and regulations are out there that protect employees. They are the same ones that will protect somebody that is working under the Consumer Directed Service Program. And there's also the availability of the care advisor to help them if there are any issues or any things that need to be sort of have somebody negotiate through. So some more protections for the personal assistant is, again, they need to be willing to work with the fiscal management service for the, to get their checks or to get the money deposited. I don't think we really do paychecks anymore. I think they electronically deposit the funds into their accounts. They also have a Bill of Rights, just like the participants do. And because the payroll is handled by the fiscal management service, they have the availability to discuss any of those, if they have any concerns or problems with the management service, with the participant, and with the care advisor. So everybody on the team, if there's problems, if somebody doesn't get paid or that sort of stuff, you've got folks to go to. So the next slide talks about the care advisor's responsibilities. And I will say that the care advisor's responsibilities are generally pretty extensive when you're setting up a case, and that sort of once the participants on the program and things are running pretty smoothly, the care advisor, not that you're not needed, you still oversee that case, but you don't have the continuous day-to-day kind of stuff that you might have when you're first getting them set up and helping them fill out paperwork and all of that sort of stuff. So again, one of the important things is that the care advisor should always let the participants take the lead in making the decisions regarding who, when, how, and what services they're going to get, because that's the key concept of consumer-directed services. But we have assessment tools that the care advisor uses, one that the participant uses, a self-assessment. The care advisor will help them develop a budget based on the budget that the consumer-directed service program has. The overall budget, how many clients they want to serve, that sort of determines what an individual's overall budget might look like. And, those are some of the things that the care advisor helps with at the very beginning, and probably annually whenever they're reassessing and looking again whether there's more funding, that sort of stuff. They would help the individual kind of develop that budget. Let's go to the next page, which really talks more about home care. So those are kind of the general descriptions of a consumer-directed program. It's pretty similar, like I said, if you're familiar with the CAP-VA consumer-directed program, this program was actually modeled after that. That program was was actually being utilized prior to the Division of Aging and Adult Services snapping up Mary Jo Littlewood, who helped actually, on the CAP program. So she came and helped us set ours up. So a lot of our things are similar. And again, the home care independence is just the name that we have that differentiates us from any other consumer-directed program like the CAP consumer-directed program. So some of the goals of home care independence is typically with public funding, professionals are in charge of decisions about how the funding is used. In other words, our sort of traditional model. Dollars are designated for specific services. There's not much flexibility on how they can be spent. The individual receiving the services may or may not know how much money is actually being spent on their supports, and therefore not really is accountable to how the money is spent. So when we look at consumer direction, that individual has a lot more knowledge about all of that because the responsibility of and some of the control lies with that participant in the program. And when the principles of consumer directions are put into practice in service delivery, individuals are given, as I said, more choice and control. It allows them to determine what they need. They're also able to choose who comes. Again, just the real core of consumer direction is about the fact that outsiders are not telling people who's going to come to their home, how they're going to provide the service, when they're going to provide it. That is all decided by that consumer. So again, that is something that I think we're, at least at my level, I don't know about at the county level, but at my level, we're getting more and more people calling in that are interested in being able to be provided with that flexibility of being allowed to sort of direct their own care. Okay, so how to get a consumer-directed service program started using home and community block grant funds. So first off, yeah.
Excuse me, Lori, this is Susan.
Yeah.
Before you get into this, how the program gets started, can you maybe share a little bit with the advisory committee about what type of service do you mostly see? Is it like helping with light home housekeeping, cooking food, or is there any kind of, I don't want to say medical, like wound care and stuff like that, but is it typically the bathing, activities of daily living, bathing, the food preparation and such? What are the typical consumers or clients like?
Yeah, very good question, Susan. And it is very similar to the in-home aid program. They will provide some housekeeping. They might make meals for them, help them bathe, get dressed. Again, all of those types of services are dependent upon what that consumer is looking to have help with. It is not a nursing home diversion program. The CAP program is set up to be a nursing home diversion program just normally, so their consumer-directed program still has the same requirements as that somebody has to be of nursing home level of care. None of our in-home aid programs really provide service, even at level 3, using a Nurse Aid 1, we still aren't really providing those medically driven types of skills that are needed. However, there are a number of, even in our in-home aid program, there are a number of skills that can be taught to the in-home aides, and also when home health goes in, they can teach family members to do certain lower level skills for an individual, and the skills training is really up to the participant. But yeah, we would probably not accept somebody who has real high medical needs. It's more of the custodial type services that we provide in our traditional in-home aid programs.
So this would be like maybe a level 1 in-home aid?
It could be level 1, 2, or 3. I mean, it could be any one of the levels that we provide under. But again, the difference is that the individual that the participant hires does not have to be a Nurse Aid 1 if they're getting level 3, type services, because the training is not contingent upon the agency to provide that training to this person. It's contingent upon the participant. They're the employer of record. They train, they hire, they train, they supervise, they schedule, they decide on the pay rate, they fire if they have to fire. That is all part of it. So if a participant doesn't want to do that, or they don't have a responsible person that wants to take on that responsibility, they would not be a good candidate for the home care independence program.
Okay, and then I have another question related to all of the paperwork. It seems like a lot of what could be a downside for a family would be having to fill out the timesheets and getting them submitted. Have you had any problems with that, or how do you solve those things?
It is not the family's responsibility to fill out the timesheet. It's the employee's responsibility, just like it is for an employee of an in-home aid agency. They have to fill out the timesheet. Now, the family members, on the paper ones, family members had to sign off on them, and then they faxed them to the fiscal management service. But I believe they've come into the 21st century, and they have electronic submission of that. And so, it's up to it's the responsibility of the employee to submit their timesheet in a timely manner, all of that sort of stuff. And, the care advisor has access to what is submitted. They have access to a portal where they can go in and see how many hours are being submitted. And the fiscal intermediary, the fiscal management service organization, they get a copy of how many hours those people are supposed to be getting a week, what days they're supposed to be on. So it's not the full-blown care plan. Like, they don't know what the person's supposed to be providing when they're in there, but they know that Lori Roth is getting services Monday through Friday, and they're getting 4 hours a day. So if an employee turns in a timesheet requesting more than those 20 hours a week, and I'm just using those as examples, please don't, that's not what everybody
I
gets.
hear you.
Okay, I have a question.
They would then reach out to the care advisor and say, what's going on here? And then they kind of would talk to the participant and the employee and say, what's going on here? So
Lori,
go ahead.
I think we have another question. Is that Eileen?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What kind of quality of care supervision is there under this under this scenario?
Well, the care advisor is responsible, and I think when we get a little further into this presentation, the care advisor is responsible for checking in with the clients. They have to make certain number of home visits. But again, this is consumer-directed care. The consumer is the employer of record. So the supervision of the worker is really the employer, the participant's responsibility. Now, like I said, the care advisor, they just don't let them go. The care advisor does still, call on a regular basis and even make regular in-person visits to do assessments and reassessments and that sort of stuff. And that's,
okay, but
again, like I said, go ahead.
I mean, it's basically up to the individual or the representative to decide whether or not they're satisfied with the care. And we're not worried about any particular medical issues that they're not sophisticated enough to deal with.
Well, I wouldn't say we're not worried about that. That's why you have a care advisor that's checking in and saying, how's this going? How's that going? Is there anything else that you need? Do you have any new, we still do the periodic assessments.
And I assume the representative does not get paid here. Or do they?
No.
All right.
No, the representative does not get paid. That's why I said a representative cannot be the paid caregiver, and they don't get paid to be the representative either.
Okay.
They're just, the representative is in the stead of the participants that cannot speak for themselves. Either, like I said, they have memory issues, or there might be a reason why the participant themselves cannot speak to what they want to do or the responsibilities that a participant has.
Hi, it's Suzanne Booth here. I have a question that parallels this.
Okay.
I'm a little confused. Is it normally the case that the personal assistant is the person who would typically stand in as a family and friend caregiver? Because I'm confused between, if you've got someone who's dealing with an elderly relative and that individual has holds that person's power of attorney and is that person's healthcare proxy.
Yeah.
That's not the person who would be the personal assistant unless the personal assistant wasn't getting paid. Is that correct?
The personal assistant is always getting paid. If somebody
Okay.
is a guardian or a power of attorney, they could function as the representative for that person if they're making the decisions for that person. But generally, if you are a guardian or a power of attorney, you are not eligible to be hired as the paid caregiver because,
Right.
again, you're making decisions
Right.
for that person.
So what, I'm trying to get a sense of when someone does have a family and friend caregiver in the mix. Is it that the personal assistant is hired to do some of the tasks that the attorney, in fact, doesn't have time to do and needs help with? Is that correct?
That could be correct. Yes, the personal assistant is hired by under, let's just say, under a ideal situation. The personal assistant is hired by the participant. The participant says, "This is who I want to provide my care." It can be a family member. It doesn't have to be a family member. It could be a neighbor. It could, it could be anyone of their choosing. More often than not, it is a family member. And I will tell you from experience, probably 90% of the phone calls I get are not from the participants, but from family caregivers that say, "I want to get paid as a family caregiver." So oftentimes I will start off my conversation with them is, do you make the decisions for your mom? And if they say yes, I say to them, then you probably cannot be paid to be the caregiver. You could hire somebody else that could provide the care, but if you're the person making the decisions for your mom and she's not making them on her own, you cannot be the paid caregiver.
What in a situation in which the relationship between the relative and the client does not have a legal angle to it? In other words, that the family and friend caregiver advocate is not the guardian, does not hold the power of attorney. Maybe the client is too cognitively impaired for that person to accept that person's power of attorney because that person knows that the client doesn't understand what a power of attorney is. That's
Right.
Looks like, is that sort of like a complicated gray area?
Well, again, we try not to have complicated gray areas because the question is, are you making the decision? Are you making the care decisions for this individual? Are you doing that? And if they answer yes, then the answer is you cannot be the paid caregiver. You cannot. And even if some participant says, well, in case I get sicker, I want my sister to be my I want my sister to be my representative. It's not a legal term. It's not like a power of attorney or a guardian, but they're still the person making decisions in lieu of the individual being able to make them for themselves. You cannot decide how many hours you're going to work. You cannot decide what you're going to pay yourself. Those decisions, that's just a conflict of interest. You can't do that.
Right.
And so, but when there are legal things in place, like a power of attorney and like a guardian, you still can't do it because you still have you now have the legal responsibility to make decisions for these individuals. Even if they say, well, what if we make somebody else the representative? Can I still be and I say no.
I
you
understand
have legal
that.
responsibility. Yeah.
How
So,
do you,
like I said, it really comes
excuse
down to-
me. I have one more question. Okay, so some of this is just confusing me. I mean, if somebody cannot make their own care decisions, how do you ensure that they are picking the representative that they really want to pick?
Yeah. My next question.
Well, the care advisor is there whenever they discuss who the representative is going to be. And in most cases, the representative is there with the person when the care advisor comes out and meets. Those are some of the forms that they go over when they describe this program. And it is the care advisor's responsibility to, when they're talking if they're talking to the participant or if they're talking to the person who calls about the program, it's their responsibility to determine whether this family setting, this family situation, whether it's an individual asking for services or a family member asking for services, it's their responsibility to determine if this is an appropriate situation for consumer direction. Just because somebody calls up and asks for consumer direction doesn't mean that we automatically give it to them. You know, the care advisor's responsibility is to assess the situation and see if the person who wants the services can be their own representative, or if the person that they want to be the representative is in fact the right person to be the representative. And so the care advisor's meeting with all of these people.
One of the
And
challenges,
Go ahead.
yeah, one of the challenges in dealing with someone with an intellectual disability, you know, someone with some type of dementia, you know, and they all present differently, is until that person is on the far end of the spectrum and it's clear to everyone in the room that the person is impaired, it can be extraordinarily difficult for someone who does not have a long history of interacting with that client in unstructured settings to develop a sense of just how impaired the person might be. So a lot of people present really well. And unless, you know, someone's with them long enough to see that they don't remember the conversation from 5 minutes ago, or they don't see logical connections or what have you, it can be hard, I would think.
And
So this is a slide further on. Let me just say this and see if this answers any of the things that you guys are concerned about, where I talk about the care advisor's responsibilities. And so there are a few of the responsibilities that are handled by the care advisor, like making contact with the participant periodically or when they are asked for assistance. So here's sort of how we set it up. Contacts are at a minimum to be 1 home visit and 2 telephone calls during the first 3 months of service. Now, if they need more than that, that's a minimum. If the care advisor is concerned and feels like there needs to be more contact with them, they can make more contact. You know, because again, since this is so person-centered, it's hard to say this is exactly what you're going to do. And like with traditional in-home aid, we say you go out the first 2 weeks, you make contact, you go out, you do a visit, then every quarter you go out and you do a visit, you do you review the care plan at 6 months, you do a reassess. Like those are very specific. And again, even with in-home aid, if those people are deteriorating or somebody calls, we can go beyond those. But even those are more set in stone than with consumer direction. But consumer direction does say that, you have to make these are a minimum of what you have to do. If you're concerned about somebody that has Alzheimer's, because you'll know what their diagnosis is whenever you're talking to them about this program, then you may make more than 1 visit that first 3 months and 2 phone calls. You may make 3 visits. You may visit every single month if you feel that that's what you need to do to actually feel comfortable about being the care advisor for this participant in the consumer directed program.
Lori, may I jump in for just a moment? So this is Jen. I just wanted to add a little bit of comment too, which is one, to kind of second what you said. Like this program may not be appropriate for many clients. So I just want to also put that out there, but if this committee were to decide to fund an agency, that expectation falls on that agency to ensure that that person is appropriate and eligible and the correct style of client for this program. And many of the agencies that I imagine you all would be looking to fund would be people with social work backgrounds who have gotten a significant amount of experience working with families and determining what's appropriate and in which setting. And then the only other thing I wanted to add, and Lori may feel differently about this than what I'm about to say, but I think about this program as it gives individuals who don't have private pay access control over things that they would not otherwise have control over. Private pay clients get to go out and hire whoever they want because they have the resources and funds to do that. The clients we're talking about don't have that benefit because if you're on in-home aid, we're going to decide which aid you're going to get. And if you don't like that one or it's not a good fit, we may not be able to give you another one. This gives people freedom of choice, kind of what Lori was talking about at the beginning. that clients who do not have those financial resources don't have that freedom of choice in other scenarios. So I just wanted to add that as kind of another context of one of the real benefits of this program and when thinking about how it could be run in our community.
And Jan, I want to add one additional thing that I think is important for everybody to kind of consider. And that is right now, we are in a crisis when it comes to direct service personnel. We do not have enough in-home aides. You know, I say in the old days, but, you know, I've been doing this since 1994, in-home aid. You know, I've been running agencies and that's why I sort of have a unique background when it came to working with the state's program. But, you know, in the old days, we used to say, we don't have the funds. You know, we can't take on any more clients because we don't have the funds. More and more, I'm hearing agencies that, especially because we got a multitude of funds since COVID, we got CARES funds, we got ARPA funds, and they can't take on new clients, and clients are going on wait lists because they don't have staff. The agencies they even contract with don't have staff to admit more clients. So this is also a way to address those folks that are sitting on waiting lists because we don't have people that can staff these clients. So it addresses some of those folks that are on the waiting list. It addresses folks, like Jen said, that really want to have control over who does what for them. It's just another tool in our toolkit. In-home aid, as it is now, is never going to go away. But like with CAP, when you go into that CAP program, you can choose, do I want to go the traditional route and have an in-home aide chosen by an agency come into my home and provide the care with me? Or do I know somebody that I trust enough and I want to hire to come in and provide my care? It gives you that option to make a decision to kind of go with that fork in the road. And like I said, I really think that it addresses that for us, it's almost getting to the point where it's a necessity because of the lack of staffing that we're experiencing, not just in North Carolina, not just in the more rural counties of North Carolina, but all over the United States. Everywhere is experiencing, and it's a number of things. People aren't going into these caregiving jobs. They don't pay enough. I always said that it's a calling. It's not it's not just a job. You have to be a caregiver at heart to really do well at this. I mean, anybody can go in and run the vacuum and do that kind of stuff, but to really be a caregiver, you have to, that has to be in your heart. That has to be the kind of person you are. And
yes, Lori, that is an excellent point. And we are all struggling when we look at our reports on a monthly basis and talk to our providers that are funded that said they are having trouble finding staff. So I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off. You've been very informative, but we do have other things on our agenda and we only have an hour. So
I was just going to say, we've gone way over my time, but we had some good questions and stuff like that. You all have the PowerPoint that I was going to present. And, and if you have further questions, my phone number and my email address is at the very end of the PowerPoint. And certainly you can call me if you want to talk more about it. But I do feel very strongly that consumer direction can help in a lot of different ways. And I just wish all counties would even do what you guys are doing, which is considering putting it into place or funding it, because it solves a couple different issues we're grappling with right now when it comes to serving. The silver tsunami is what we used to call it. Those of you who've been around long enough to remember that term.
Oh, I remember. I am one. I am one. So I really appreciate your time.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Can I ask one more question or clarification on this? And maybe this is why I'm confused. So after it seems to me that the point of this is actually to allow people to hire people as aides through non-traditional means, it sounds like, when we talk about it. So I can hire, I don't have to go through an agency where they have trouble getting people. I can hire my niece who's working part-time at Arby's or something like that, and she can also work part-time for me. And that seems to be how we're trying to alleviate the logjam. Is that reasonably accurate? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That makes
Okay,
more
before I-
sense, actually.
Before I leave, anything else?
We'll be in touch if we have more questions, Lori. Thank you so much again.
Okay, if you want me to come and talk again to the group, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, bye.
Okay, advisory committee people. Let's do some quick homework on approving the rest of the agenda, which we probably won't get to. I'm thinking we could do, Jen could give us some direction on the in-home aid stuff. I think the bylaws, we can wait until next month to make sure people have had a chance to review them and people have a chance to decide if they want to become the co-chair. Hint, hint. And so if we can do in-home aid and then maybe a quick discussion about funding and next steps. Is that okay with folks with the agenda? Okay, agenda
Yes.
revised and any approvals?
Approve,
Suzanne,
motion to approve.
any objections? No. Okay. Meeting minutes. Billy's
Move we approve. I move we approve.
second.
Second,
Moved. Okay, Jen, we got our housekeeping done. Now it's time for you to give us a update on the in-home aid transition from Council on Aging to Buncombe County.
Okay, and I'll try to do this quickly. And it's a good follow-up to what Lori was just talking about. So when we got the information sent from Council on Aging, there were 35 individuals that were currently receiving service. We sent letters, and Council on Aging did with us in partnership to all of those clients to see if they wanted to transition to the county. We, 4 clients chose not to engage with us, either did not respond or have not been willing to allow us to come into their home. So that left 31 clients. 17 of those clients had other agencies that chose not to contract with the county. So there were 4 agencies that had contracted with Council on Aging for the service. Of those, only 2 agencies decided to contract with the county, Premier and Always. We did add a 3rd agency on for this year at the county, and it was Cappy's Home Care. So of the 17 clients that transferred to us that did not have aides, we had to, or their agencies did not transfer, we had to restaff those vendor agencies that chose to contract with us. Of those, all but 3 are still waiting on an aide. So 14 of those that did not have a home now have a home and have an aide assigned. So that leaves, we have 28 clients currently receiving aid service, 3 are currently waiting, and we're starting to add new people that have been on the wait list onto service. It is really difficult when we continue to transition this in-home aid program from agency to agency because we have to find a new agency that will staff clients. We have to do all new assessments. Zach's shaking his head. Yes, we cannot just take the assessments that were done by the prior agency. We have to go out and redo all of those assessments. And so we're very excited about our current providers, Always, Premier, and Cappy's, and they've done an excellent job of trying to staff clients. But just like Lori was talking about, there's definitely an aid shortage in our community. No matter how much money we throw at the problem, we cannot move as many clients as we would like to at one time. We did also find during the course of this that 4 clients are using family members to provide service. And after a very deep dive into the review of the manual, I don't think that any of those 4 clients actually are eligible to be served under the in-home aid home and community care block grant policy. So we made the decision to fund those 4 individuals with the county funds. Now, all 4 of those clients would be eligible to be served under the CDS program, the one we just heard about. So all of those could have been staffed with consumer-directed dollars. Just as a quick reminder, you all did fund consumer-directed services with Council on Aging. Unfortunately, being a new program, it just wasn't successful because it is a hard program to pick up and start running. Like any program is a hard program to pick up and start running. But identifying the appropriate clients was a challenge. It may be something we want to consider we still want to consider for our community. I've talked with Susan and let her know that Mecklenburg County does do this. They fund this program. I believe they have 8 clients on their contract. So we're not talking, you know, hundreds of clients being served, but they have 8 clients getting consumer directed service. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about in-home aid, but that's kind of the update about where we are right now.
So Jen, can you share the number of folks on the waiting list and how that's being addressed?
Yes, we have right around 100 people on the waiting list. We are so grateful we're getting an intern. She starts on Monday, and her job is actually going to be to call every single person on the wait list and prioritize them using the prioritization tool that DAS put out. It is not a mandated tool. However, and Council on Aging did use that tool as well, but we were going to use it in-house because there's an eligibility screening piece around, are they eligible for Medicaid? Are they eligible for veteran services? Are they on hospice? Because we want to make sure that clients are accessing the service that they are most eligible for. I interpret block grant policy to say this really should be some of the payers of last resort, which means if you're eligible for VA benefits, you should be utilizing that service. If you're eligible for Medicaid and can get PCS, personal care services, or CAP, you should be using those services. And then, and only then, should we be looking at like in-home aid, home and community care block grant services.
And I would add to Jen, what Jen was saying earlier, we don't even have to look as far as Mecklenburg for consumer-directed services because Henderson County DSS is providing consumer-directed services right now. So we could always get Tracy Korn and her team to possibly join us for a meeting one day to just let us know how it's going. Or if there is a potential provider in Buncombe, we can connect them with them so they can kind of give them a lattice work of what they need to do to get this program up and running.
Thanks, Zach.
And I just wanted to say one other thing, which is hospice. I just wanted to mention that a client is not eligible to be on in-home aid if they also have hospice services. And so as clients start to transition to hospice, we would be removing them from our service as well.
So Jen, to kind of summarize, the in-home aid transfer has been a challenge. And, but it looks like you have all but, what'd you say, 3 clients that are not being served. And the 4 clients are being paid through the county funds.
Yes, because we did not want to remove them from service. We felt like we needed to figure out a way to navigate that. And I just want to say that the transition, it was by no fault of Council on Aging that the transition has been challenging. It's just the program itself transitioning from one agency to the next. Council on Aging did a really good job of getting information and documentation up and ready for us to transfer. It's a hard program when not all 4 subcontractors decide to move forward with us.
Okay, we'll do bylaws next month. Please think about if you want to be the co-chair. Going on to expenditures, what I want to remind folks, this is the beginning of the fiscal year. And although I did not send out the units of service, I think we could send it out with the PowerPoint after this meeting. But what you'll see on that report and the county fund report is we're off to a slow start. And it's a little difficult to make any kind of assumptions or even comment on month 1. So we can have a little bit more conversation about that next month. But remember, and I also sent out with the original email, the final allocation that has the 40,578 that still needs to be allocated. So I have 5 more minutes. Maybe we can go around real quick to say hi to Taylor Cox. Hi, Taylor. You're part of a really good team. I'm the chair. My background is accounting, with an emphasis on long-term care, Medicare and Medicaid payment policy. And I've been doing the chair and being involved in this committee for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Suzanne, 30 seconds or less.
Hi there. My connection here is as an advocate for elderly relatives and for someone who's disabled by a brain injury, which is a long story for another day, but that's my interest here, or my connection.
Eileen?
Now it looks like I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a retired attorney. I spent a lot of time, say many years working on guardianships, which is one reason I had some questions and confusions about what we were just talking about. I've been here on here maybe 2 years now, I think. That's about it.
Deborah?
Hi, Taylor. I'm Deborah. I'm a newbie on here also. I've been on here less than a year. It seems to be a really great and committed group, so welcome to it. My background is I'm a retired real estate appraiser, as well as most recently a social worker, and I worked with the Council on Aging for 3 or 4 years and retired from there also.
Cindy?
Hi, I'm recently retired as the Director of Literacy Together, but earlier in my career worked in gerontology, doing a number of different roles. So I'm interested in coming back to this field as I retire.
Greg?
I'm Greg. Welcome, Taylor. I have a daughter-in-law named Taylor. I find that name. I have absolutely no experience with seniors other than bathing and feeding myself. That was about it. My background is education. I was a high school assistant principal for years, retired 5 years ago. Welcome.
And you are an excellent resource in our committee as Mr. Joe Public in the nicest way.
Joe Public's right.
Rebecca?
Hi, Taylor. I'm Rebecca Hartz. I'm a recovering social worker, retired, and this is my 3rd year on this committee.
And Taylor, you want to tell us a quick word about yourself?
Sure. I'm so excited to join y'all. I have worked with the senior population for the past 12 years of my career. So this is where my heart is entirely. I was also raised by my grandparents. So this is the path that I chose. And I'm excited to be a part of the group here and contribute.
Well, thank you. And we are supported by Zach, the wonderful Mr. Zach Smith.
Taylor
Jen
already
Pete-
knows me. She gets millions of emails from me already. So
Okay. And then Billy and Jen from the county. So we're very lucky to have them all. And Dan, who is enjoying, I think, what was it, the Outer Banks with his kids and grandchildren. He's on the committee also. So I want to be respectful for everybody's time. I have 4:29. Just real quick, don't forget we're going to have our luncheon at the Land of Sky on October 23rd. And we're going to have a delicious meal by the catering service called Red Radish. They're fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you have that on your calendar. We will meet next month. Let's see.
You said the 23rd. The 25th is a Wednesday.
Oh, that's October. September, the next meeting is in September 27th. And then October, ooh, you're right. You're right, Greg.
course
See?
I'm Joe Public, right?
Yeah. And the one has a calendar. Thank you for keeping us on track.
Right.
So yes, on the 25th of October, we'll have our lunch. So, oh, a lot of information in a short period of time. Any last comments before we sign off?
I just wanted to say if anybody had any additional questions that you wanted to talk about regarding CDS, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself. Happy to talk with you. Zach, I know, has information, and we can always arrange for another presentation at another point. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks so much.
Well, very good. Everybody have a lovely evening. Thank you. Thank you so much for volunteering. You all are great. Have a good night.
Thank